"Immediately disconnect the patient from the machines," yelled the clinic owner in rage upon learning that a homeless person had been operated on in his expensive clinic. But when he entered the ward, he froze in place. On the bed lay, "Before we continue, please write from which country you are watching this video, and also check if you are subscribed to the channel, as I share interesting life stories with you every day. Enjoy listening." The workday of the renowned surgeon Arthur Walter was coming to an end. He sighed heavily as he prepared to go home. The man was so exhausted that he could barely stand on his feet. The entire day, Arthur had no chance to sit down and have even a cup of coffee, let alone a proper meal. Complicated surgeries, unusual cases requiring special attention, and difficult, tense communication with patients' relatives. All of this drained the man and sucked out all his energy. But Arthur never complained. He loved his work with all his heart and considered helping and healing people his calling, his life's purpose. The doctor was about to leave when suddenly a young man, about 30 years old, rushed into the clinic with a bloody girl in his arms. The man's face was distorted with horror, and his frightened eyes were full of despair and pain. The stranger was in a state of shock. "Please, save my girlfriend," he shouted, addressing Arthur. "Help! She's dying!" Arthur quickly approached the injured girl to check if she was alive and began examining her. "Sarah, quickly to the operating room. Every minute counts," yelled the doctor. "But Arthur, we can't admit someone from the street," Katrina timidly said, not moving from her spot. "Let them take her to the nearest public hospital. I doubt this person can afford the surgery. It's better to call an ambulance." "Can't you see she's dying?" the stranger shouted hysterically. "By the time the ambulance gets here, she'll be dead. I don't have the money now, but I will pay everything back. Just save Lisa, I beg you." Arthur understood the stranger was right. The girl was in critical condition and could die at any moment. If she died before his eyes, Arthur would never forgive himself. Ignoring the nurse's words, he took the injured girl to the operating room. The operation lasted several hours, during which Lisa's life was saved. She was still in serious condition, connected to numerous machines that closely monitored her state. All this time, Ben, her boyfriend, was sitting in the corridor. "How is she?" the doctor asked, tears in his eyes. "Will she live?" The operation was tough and risky, but there was no other way to save the patient's life. "I can't tell you anything definite right now. The answer lies only with God. So pray for her. Let's hope the girl can survive the night, that her young body will cope." "Thank you so much, doctor. I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, I definitely wouldn't have made it to the hospital in time. Your clinic was so close. I carried her here in my arms. There was an accident. I lost control." The young man took the doctor's hand and kissed it. At that moment, Arthur clearly realized he had chosen the right path in life, that he had found his purpose. He was genuinely happy to bring something good and kind to this cruel and unjust world. He saw so much genuine, omnipotent love and heart-wrenching pain in the man's eyes who brought the bloody patient into the clinic. Robert, the clinic owner, had just stepped out of the bathroom. He took a shower before bed. The man planned to go to bed early since he was supposed to fly to Texas for business negotiations with a major medical company the following evening. The phone on the bedside table rang. He reluctantly brought it to his ear. "Do you have a serious reason for disturbing me at such a late hour? If so, I'm all ears." "What? Walter acted out again?" "Okay, I understand. You did the right thing by telling me immediately. Everything is clear. I'll handle it. I'm not going to tolerate this chaos in my clinic any longer." Robert's face changed drastically after speaking with his assistant. It became stern, worried, and severe. The man dialed the number of his best surgeon and called him. In anger, when he heard Arthur's voice on the line, he exclaimed, "Walter, what do you think you're doing?" It seems you've forgotten that you work in a private clinic, not in a charity organization or public hospital. How dare you operate on a girl from the street? I take it you've already been briefed on what happened, Arthur said wearily. I expected such words from you, Robert. As a doctor, I couldn't act differently. An ambulance wouldn't have made it to bring her to the nearest hospital. Every minute counted. I'm sorry, but I fulfilled my professional and human duty. I'm very disappointed in you, Walter. I invited you to work in my clinic because you're genuinely a gifted doctor, as they say, from God. I hoped that people would follow you, but your charity work is ruining everything for me. You have a calling, I have a business. If you can't work by my rules, then leave. I'm tired of putting up with this. In this harsh world, it's those who have money who survive, not those who can rush their girlfriend to the best private clinic in the region. With that, Robert hung up. He was decisively planning to fire Arthur, as he was fed up with his antics. Early in the morning, Robert arrived at the clinic to sort out what had happened the previous evening. He was told that the girl was still in serious condition and that she had been connected to expensive machines upon the surgeon's orders, monitoring all vital functions. Tracking her condition and administering costly medications, Robert shouted in rage. Arrange for the patient's transportation to another medical facility. I'll sue him. Do what you deem necessary. Arthur responded calmly and began packing his books into a box. I've completed my task. I saved the patient's life. You're right. I don't belong in this clinic. I will return to where I should have stayed. I will return to a public hospital where everyone has the right to receive medical help, regardless of whether they have money or not. Arthur took his box and left the office, leaving the clinic owner in bewilderment. His confidence and defiance left Robert in confusion. He exited the office to see with his own eyes the patient over whom the renowned surgeon lost his prestigious and well-paying job. Robert entered the post-operative ward where the girl injured in the accident lay to see her. Lisa! The man cried out in horror and rushed to the patient who he intended to disconnect from the machines. Sweetheart! My God! My dear girl! Lisa! Robert took his daughter's pale, slender hand and kissed it. He sobbed, tears streaming down his cheeks. At that moment, a nurse entered the ward. Robert, I wanted to know about disconnecting the patient. No, under no circumstances, Robert shouted, casting a fiery glance at the nurse. Don't touch her, do you hear? No one will disconnect her. That's my daughter. The nurse retreated, stunned, realizing that the situation had taken an unexpected turn. Meanwhile, Arthur, having left the clinic, headed to the public hospital where he used to work. He regretted once accepting Robert's offer to join his private clinic, where only rather wealthy people could afford treatment. Undoubtedly, he earned much more after that, but deep down he felt guilty for those who couldn't afford his services. It tormented him. When Robert fired him, Arthur was probably welcomed back with open arms, as he was a doctor from God. You can't find such talented specialists dedicated to their work with a light. He was a lonely person without a wife or children. At home, he was awaited only by his old cat named Mars, whom the surgeon loved with all his heart. But with his personal life, things did not go well. Behind lay a failed marriage. Emily, his ex-wife, divorced him because she couldn't get pregnant from him. The tests confirmed it was his problem. The man loved his wife dearly, offered her options like adoption or in vitro fertilization with donor material, but Emily flatly refused and left him, calling him deficient. After that, Arthur withdrew into himself, focusing his energy on his work. All this time, Robert tried to recover from the shock, coming to terms with his daughter being in such a dire condition. He headed to Arthur's house to tell him the truth. Arthur expected no one, and he was even more surprised when he saw Robert on the stairwell. His unexpected visit left the surgeon in bewilderment. "Hello, Arthur. Will you let me in?" Robert said, looking at him apologetically. "Come in, Robert," Arthur muttered and gestured for him to follow. Arthur invited his now former boss to sit in the living room. Robert was worried and thoughtful. He didn't know how to start this challenging conversation, as he had never found himself in such a position before, needing to ask someone for forgiveness. "What brings you to me?" the surgeon asked, unable to hold back. He understood that Robert wanted to tell him something important, but couldn't do it. "Arthur, I need to talk to you." Robert sighed and settled into a chair. "I owe you my daughter's life. I am now eternally in your debt." "Sorry, I don't understand what you mean," the man shrugged. "The girl you operated on yesterday turned out to be my daughter. She's my Lisa. You saved her life yesterday. I dread to think what might have happened if you had told the guy to take her to the nearest public hospital." "What?" "Your daughter," Arthur reiterated. "I thought your daughter lived abroad." "Yes, I told everyone that my daughter lived abroad, but in reality, I didn't know where she lived. The last time I spoke with her was 2 years ago. I'll never forget that day. She brought home her boyfriend, the one who begged you to save Lisa yesterday. The guy turned out to be from a poor family. His mother is a cleaner and his father is a plumber. I couldn't accept my daughter's choice. We had a big fight that day. I made her choose, either me or him, and I threatened Lisa, saying that if she chose him, she would lose me forever. I would leave her without a penny, without any inheritance, without an apartment and a car. Despite my threats, Lisa chose him. She left home, and since then, we haven't spoken or seen each other. Yesterday, fate itself brought Lisa to my clinic. Perhaps it pleased God that my daughter got into an accident not far from my clinic. It was a sign for me. When I saw her in such a terrible state, my heart almost stopped. It had never hurt so much as at that moment. No father should ever experience this. At that moment, I realized how foolish I had been. I questioned how I dared to make my daughter choose between me and her beloved when our life is so fragile it can break at any moment. When I thought about disconnecting my own child from those machines, I felt ill. It's hard for me to talk about all this, to confess to you what I've kept silent about for so long. You saved my child, you spared her from death, and saved me from an eternal hell on earth and in the afterlife. Forgive me. Please return to the clinic. You are needed there. We don't see what's important, Arthur replied. Usually our eyes open when it's too late, but I'm glad fate gave you a chance to fix everything. Your daughter survived. She will recover. Support her now. Be with her. Show her how much you love her. Love works wonders. It heals better than any medicine. But I won't return to the clinic. Why? I'm ready to offer any conditions. Money is not an issue. I owe you my daughter's life. It's not about the money. It's about my conscience, which gives me no peace. I am a doctor, meaning I must serve people regardless of whether they have money or not. I want everyone to be equal before me. Both the rich and the poor have the right to seek my help. I will continue working at the hospital where I worked before. Robert realized that Arthur had already made his decision, and arguing with him was useless. He returned to the clinic to see his daughter again, to sit by her side and talk. He grasped her cold fingers in his hands and with a trembling voice said, "Forgive me for everything, sweetheart. Forgive me for causing you pain, for turning my back on you. For 2 whole years, I didn't call, didn't write to you, but every minute you were in my heart. You have remained my little princess, whom I love dearly, despite everything. Be strong, my little girl. I believe in you. I know you will manage and pull through." He heard a quiet moan. He raised his head and saw his daughter had come to, and tears filled her eyes. Happiness overwhelmed Robert in that moment. He thanked God for sparing her, his only child. He hugged his daughter, kissed her gently and tenderly, stroked her face. Lisa was getting better with each day, quickly recovering. She managed to forgive her father for all the bad between them. Her boyfriend visited her every day, bringing delicious homemade food, clean clothes, and personal hygiene items. He turned out to be a very caring young man. One morning, Robert decided to visit his daughter before heading to a business meeting. He stopped a step away from the slightly open door and heard her boyfriend's voice. "I made chicken broth soup for you," he said. "Your mom asked me to pass it on. She went all the way to the village to get a farm chicken to make healthy soup. There are also apples and pears from the village. Grandma sent them to you, saying she prays for you and waits for you in the village. The fresh air there will help you recover quickly after the accident. We'll go when you're discharged. I also bought you a warm blanket. It's warm in the clinic, of course, but I thought you might need it. There are also fluffy socks here for you." At that moment, Robert realized how lucky his daughter was to have her boyfriend, as he was very caring and attentive. Realizing his mistake in giving Lisa's chosen one no chance, turning his back on him instantly, he entered the ward to make things right. "My dear ones, forgive me, Lisa and Ben. I am so guilty before you. I want you to know how deeply I regret my words. I want you to be happy, to love and cherish each other. That's more important than anything else. Everything else will come in time. Thank you, Ben, for always being there for my daughter, for surrounding her with care and love." Ben and Lisa forgave Robert and reconciled with him. After her recovery, the girl went to California to her boyfriend's grandmother. She spent several months there, and life in California did her good. Lisa regained her strength. The terrible ordeal was left behind. In the fall, she married Ben. After everything that had happened, Robert began actively collaborating with charitable foundations, regularly donating part of the money he earned for the treatment and rehabilitation of children from low-income families and people with disabilities. He also decided to give good discounts for pensioners, people with serious diagnoses, and children. Did you enjoy this story? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to not miss new releases. See you soon.